Fear and Hunger is a game that people often describe as cruel, but they rarely clarify what they mean. Do they mean the game's oppressive atmosphere? Do they mean the game's difficulty? Do they mean the scenes where the player character is getting oppressed by... Can you show this on YouTube? Either way, Fear and Hunger and its sequel, Fear and Hunger 2, Termina, are both great games, and focusing solely on the wow guys it's so dark and hard oh my god it's just like Dark Souls is doing the game a bit of a disservice. Fear and Hunger is a survival horror JRPG released in 2018 by Miro Haverinen. The game's premise is pretty simple. 4 people visit the dungeons of Fear and Hunger. All of them come separately and for different reasons. Their goals share a common element, a prisoner named Legard, the leader of the Knights of the Midnight Sun. Kahara, the mercenary, was paid to rescue him. Diars, the knight, was a trusted member of Legard's group. Enki, the Dark Priest, had a vision about Legard, and Ragnvalder, the Outlander, wants to get revenge on Legard for slaughtering his army. However, upon entering the dungeon, they quickly discover that what was once a simple prison is now infested with monsters, mysterious creatures, and ritual leftovers. One of the most prevalent aspects of Fear and Hunger is risk versus reward. The game constantly asks you, do you want to take risks, or would you rather play it safe? Will you kill a character to unlock their abilities in the Hexen, this game's equivalent of a skill tree, or would you rather try to recruit them? A great example of risk versus reward is one of the game's most overlooked mechanics, the coin flip. A lot of the time, the player will be asked to choose between heads or tails. The effects of the coin flip depend on what's currently happening. Sometimes the reward will be a powerful book, and sometimes it will be avoiding taking some damage. Sometimes, the punishment for losing will be getting a weak item, and sometimes it's an instant game over. The game is full of RNG elements, but it gives the player just enough control to make them not feel powerless. You can stack the odds in your favor by throwing an additional lucky coin, but it's a rare resource and one the player will never have enough of to truly feel at ease. Will you risk a lucky coin on a chance of getting a powerful item, or will you save it to escape death during a battle? The battle system is one of the most unique things about the game. The only reward for beating most enemies is that a dead enemy won't attack you, and that they will sometimes hold an item. There is no experience system, and combat is often better avoided. Each encounter is its own boss fight, and underestimating an enemy will often lead to extreme consequences. Attacking in Fear and Hunger is unique. Instead of an enemy being a single unit, they are comprised of individual body parts that the player can target. A commonly used example of this is the guard, one of the first enemies the player will encounter. One arm will chop off your limbs, the other will occasionally make you flip a coin, and if you fail, you die. The Stinger will attack once every few turns. To defeat him, the player has to either destroy the beefy torso or the much weaker head. However, the only way to consistently hit the head is to first destroy both legs, which will make it vulnerable. Will you risk instantly going for the head? Will you disarm the guard to make the fight easier? Or will you instantly go for the torso, hoping for a critical hit? Each encounter is a puzzle that can be solved. With enough time, the player will figure out an optimal solution for each enemy. For example, to safely defeat a guard, first disarm him, guard on the second turn to automatically pass the coin flip, destroy the stinger, attack the torso, guard to pass the coin flip, and then repeat the cycle of hitting the torso twice and guarding. The combat puzzle appears in almost every single fight, whether it's against a guard, one of the game's many bosses, or a random bug on the floor. The player can lose limbs, just like enemies, but unlike your opponents, you can only use one action per turn. Limb loss is the game's most punishing mechanic. If an enemy rips off your left arm, that's it, you're not getting it back. Say goodbye to shields and two-handed weapons. Lose both arms, say goodbye to any non-physical weapons. Lose both your legs, hope you enjoy crawling around at a snail's pace. Encounter a very powerful stalker enemy that rips your eyes out, have fun not seeing anything. These permanent effects inflicted on your characters are where the game's difficulty comes from. Except for fusing two characters together into a marriage, there's no way to reattach your limbs, which adds a lot of weight to the risk versus reward mechanics. Exploration is another area where you need to carefully consider what you might find and what might find you. There are many ways to end your run early, whether that's walking in a swinging blade or jumping down a toilet. The game incentivizes replaying it. As you continuously throw yourself at the game, dying and retrying, you'll gain more ground and knowledge of what to expect. You know how to defeat a guard, you know how to get to the 7th level of the dungeon, you know where certain gear is, you know where the traps are. You have enough knowledge to turn the table and to abuse game mechanics for your own benefit. A lot of stuff won't be discovered on a first playthrough. Finding Legard, for example, must be done within 30 minutes of starting the game, and achieving this with no prior knowledge would be practically impossible. No two playthroughs are the same, as random loot isn't the only RNG element of the game. Certain elements of the dungeon are randomized at the start of every playthrough. Some floors will have a completely different layout, and certain events will only happen on some runs and have no chance of happening on others. The 4 characters each provide a unique advantage, and all of them are at least somewhat viable. The player could also try the 2 higher difficulties, and no, we don't talk about that one. Terror and and Starvation, which will add a lot more traps, enemies, and has some exclusive content like new boss fights, and Hard Mode, which will take everything from Terror and Starvation, doesn't allow you to save the game or recruit other characters, not counting the use of Necromancy, but in exchange allows you to get 4 so-called S endings, bumping the amount of endings to a total of 10. Fear and Hunger is really good, but it's not without flaws. It would be dishonest to hide the, quite frankly, horrible technical state the game is in. In all my playthroughs, I encountered at least one major bug. Some are helpful, like doors being coded as legs, so the skill leg sweep will destroy any door, but a lot of them can have run-ending consequences. There are also countless debug features accidentally left in the game, grammatical mistakes, and other similar small issues that give the game a feeling of not being as polished as it should be. Technical issues aside, there are a lot of very weird design choices. At the start of the game, you get a little choose your own adventure type intro, where your choices determine your starting gear and skills. If you don't pick certain choices here, you won't have an option to learn the dash skill, unless you use an empty scroll, but that would be a giant waste of a rare item, without which you'll spend the whole game moving around very slowly. For a more refined experience, you'd be better off with the game's sequel. Fear and Hunger 2, Termina, picks up around 400 years after the first game, taking place in Europe around the start of World War II. 14 people are on a train to Prehevil, each for their own reasons. They all fall asleep and they all share a dream, where a figure named Perkele informs them that the trickster moon god Rare has chosen them to be participants at the titular Termina festival. They have 3 days to kill each other, or else they all suffer a terrible fate. Out of the 14 participants, 8 of them are playable. The goal of the game is to win the festival, and the game gives the player a lot of small nudges meant to encourage you to kill the other contestants yourself. If you go left after starting the game, you'll meet Tanaka, the Japanese businessman. He's alone and not much of a threat. If the player doesn't kill him and goes to the nearby tunnel, Tanaka will be murdered in front of you by someone else. Sometimes, you'll see a contestant threatening another contestant, and if you don't step in, one of them is gonna die, which encourages picking a side and helping one or the other. Why does killing people yourself matter? If you take a contestant's life, you obtain their soul, which allows you to unlock that character's abilities in the Hexen. Since there are way more characters in this game than in the original, the Hexen is way bigger, which allows for more build variety. Unlike in the first game, Soul Stones, the currency used in the Hexen, aren't a random drop from enemies. Now, to acquire them, you have to sacrifice heads to a deity known as the Tainted One and an imperfect ritual circle. To acquire heads, you need to use a bonesaw on an enemy corpse, which gives the player an incentive to actually fight enemies instead of avoiding them. Fights are also less risky, as you can recover lost limbs by drawing Sylvian's Sigil at an asymmetric ritual circle. However, it's not free, as there are only 4 blank asymmetric circles in the game, which could instead be used to increase affinity with a different god. As you could have figured out from all the references so far, Fear and Hunger 2, Termina borrows heavily from Majora's Mask, and just like in that game, the time limit is very important. Unlike in Majora's Mask, time only progresses when the player decides to rest, which is also when you get to save and use the Hexen, meaning that the player only has 8 guaranteed saves. Sleeping isn't the only way to save, but it's the only one that's always available to the player. This adds greatly to the risk versus reward aspect. Are you satisfied with your progress enough to use one of your limited saves, or would you rather achieve more at the cost of possibly losing what you already did? Just like in Majora's Mask, some events only happen during a specific time, and so a knowledgeable player can plan out all 3 days to perform an optimal run. Instead of being a linear descent like the dungeon of Fear and Hunger in the first game, Prehevil and its surrounding area is essentially an open world, albeit a very small one. Most problems presented by the game can be solved in multiple ways. A good, and more importantly, spoiler-free example is getting into the city. The player could obtain a key to the sewers and enter the city from below, the player could optimize their party and destroy the door, the player could obtain both gate keys and enter normally, or the player could find a shotgun and break the locks. The story and lore of the second game aren't as good as the original, but there's still a bunch of creative and interesting stuff here. The punishment for not participating in the festival is moon scorching, a process that transforms people into monsters. These are often representations of what the characters consider to be their worst qualities. As an example, Karin, the war journalist, turns into a bird with bodies of dead soldiers on its back, representing her dilemma regarding her job, feeling like both a vulture for profiting of the war and like a Valkyrie honoring the deaths of soldiers by reporting on it. Another good example is Olivia, the wheelchair-bound botanist, who transforms into a machine, which could represent her feeling dehumanized due to her lack of functioning legs. Termina's replay value is insane. Each starting character has something unique about them. Dan has an absolutely busted analyze skill, Osa can be extremely powerful early game, Marco is very powerful if he fights with his bare fists, Olivia's wheelchair can stun enemies if you ram into them after driving downstairs, etc. While each character goes through more or less the same story, certain events will only happen while playing as specific characters, so there's a lot of content to discover. There are only 3 endings, which isn't a lot compared to the first game's 10, but replays are incentivized by ending B showing you what happened to your starting character after the festival concluded. Each ending also unlocks new skills in the Hexen, which can be purchased on future playthroughs. Fear and Hunger and its sequel, Termina, are both great games, and both are definitely worth playing. Fear and Hunger 1 excels in atmosphere and story, while Termina excels in replayability and build variety. The first game is now more or less abandoned by the developer to focus on updating Termina, but there's a bug fix mod available that's generally recommended for a better experience. The upcoming Termina update is now being called an overhaul, and what has been posted about it so far looks really neat. If you're fine with sensitive content and you're a fan of JRPGs like me, I'd definitely recommend checking it out. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, and you probably did since you're here, leave a like, and if you want more content like this in the future, subscribe. Maybe even leave a comment telling me what you think. Oh, and by the way, did you know that you could have seen this video a day early? For just $2 a month you can become a channel member, which allows you to watch new videos 24 hours before anyone else. You also receive exclusive updates on new content, your name gets added to the special thanks section at the end of new videos, and you get access to Creators Commentary, a series where I watch my own content and provide additional details. Alongside this, you get a badge next to your username and emotes that you can use in my comment section. All of this for $2 a month. Sounds like a good deal to me.